My family rigged my brakes and calculated my death for a payout. They didn't know about the hidden dashcam, or my father's secret will clause. My name is Julian. I am 34 years old, and I work as a senior wealth manager at a prestigious corporate finance firm in downtown Denver, Colorado. I live an incredibly quiet, highly disciplined, and frugal life. I drive a reliable 7-year-old Toyota sedan that I bought used. I meticulously max out my 401k every single year, I cook my own meals, I clip digital coupons, and I absolutely do not buy things I do not strictly need. If you saw me at the local supermarket on a Sunday morning, wearing a plain gray hoodie and faded denim jeans, you would never in a million years guess that my signature is the only thing standing between my family and a massive, multi-million-dollar fortune. My father passed away 5 years ago from a wildly aggressive form of stomach cancer. He was a brilliant, relentlessly hard-working man who built a highly lucrative commercial real estate portfolio from absolutely nothing. He started with one broken-down duplex on the outskirts of the city and turned it into an empire. But he made one fatal mistake in his life: he married my mother, Eleanor. Eleanor is a woman who measures human worth entirely in dollar signs, designer labels, country club memberships, and exclusive zip codes. She views everyone in her life as either a financial asset or a social liability. And she raised my younger brother, Carter, to be an exact carbon copy of her. Carter is 25 years old, chronically unemployed, and thoroughly convinced that the universe owes him a lavish, billionaire lifestyle just for existing. When Carter was 18, my father set up a generous college fund for him. Carter drained the entire account in 3 semesters, dropping out of a private university to trade crypto, which really meant sitting on Eleanor's expensive leather couch, smoking weed, and aggressively demanding more money from my father. I still remember the last conversation I ever had with my dad. The sterile, bleach-scented smell of the hospital room still haunts me to this day. The rhythmic, agonizing beep of his heart monitor felt like a ticking countdown clock to the absolute destruction of my family. His skin was gray, his body frail, but he gripped my hand with a desperate, terrifying strength. His eyes were wide and filled with a profound sorrow. He told me I was the only one in the family with a functioning brain and a moral compass. He said he was leaving me in absolute charge of the trust. Not Eleanor. Not Carter. Me. He made me promise to take care of them, but to never, ever let them ruin me. He told me to be the heavy brake pedal for our family, because they had lived with their foot slammed on the gas their entire lives. He knew that if Eleanor gained control of the real estate portfolio, she would sell everything at a massive discount just to fund a decade of pure luxury, leaving them entirely destitute when the well eventually ran dry. I looked my dying father in the eye and swore I would protect his legacy. I did not realize I was signing a legal contract for years of intense psychological warfare. The day of the funeral was an absolute theatrical spectacle. Eleanor wore a custom black designer dress that cost significantly more than my car, performing her role as the tragic, grieving widow for the cameras and her wealthy country club friends. Carter was busy texting on his phone and checking social media during the eulogy. I stood in the back, quietly mourning the only real parent I ever had. But the true chaos started 2 days later at the lawyer's office. When the estate attorney read the will and revealed that I was the sole trustee of the $3.5 million estate, Eleanor completely lost her mind. She threatened a massive lawsuit right there in the boardroom. She screamed that I had manipulated a dying, medicated man, but the paperwork was ironclad. My father had made absolutely sure of it. My current nightmare started on a regular Tuesday evening, 3 years into my miserable tenure as the family bank. I was sitting at my kitchen table, completely exhausted after a 12-hour day of analyzing corporate portfolios, doing my dreaded monthly ritual. I was going through the thick stack of invoices my mother had forwarded to me. The trust was legally set up to cover their housing, healthcare, basic maintenance, and a reasonable living allowance. But Eleanor's definition of reasonable was entirely divorced from reality. I picked up the first receipt from the pile. A luxury spa in the city center. $600 for a caviar facial. Another $400 for a seaweed body wrap. And $300 for exotic skin creams. I rubbed my eyes, feeling the familiar throbbing tension headache creeping up my neck. I moved to the next bill. It was a credit card statement from Carter. He had put a massive $4,000 deposit down on a luxury ski chalet in Aspen for him and his degenerate friends. No job, no prospects, no income, but he needed a snowy mansion to maintain his fake social media image. And then, I saw the big one. An auto loan statement. Eleanor had leased a brand new, top-of-the-line Range Rover. The monthly payment was astronomical, over $1,800 a month. She expected the trust to just blindly absorb it like it was a standard water bill. She didn't even ask me. She just signed the lease and sent the invoice to my address. I grabbed my red pen. I circled the spa charges. Rejected. I crossed out the Aspen deposit. Rejected. And I put a massive, aggressive red X across the Range Rover payment. The trust rules were explicitly clear. The funds were for basic well-being, not for funding a billionaire lifestyle on a millionaire's budget. The next morning, right on cue, my phone lit up with Eleanor's name blazing across the screen. I let it ring 3 times, taking a deep breath and steeling my nerves before pressing answer. "Julian," she snapped, dropping her fragile, wounded bird act instantly. Her voice was sharp, loud, and venomous. "I just saw the automated email. You rejected my invoices again. Mom, the trust does not cover luxury caviar wraps or Carter's Aspen party vacations, and it certainly does not cover a Range Rover. We have talked about this extensively. You have your monthly allowance. If you want those extravagant things, you pay for them from your own personal funds. I am a grieving widow," she yelled into the receiver. "Your father wanted me to be comfortable. Do you have any idea how deeply humiliating it is to explain to my friends at the club why my own son is financially starving me out? You live in a fully paid off, 7-bedroom mansion in a gated community. Mom, you are not starving. I am following the strict legal guidelines of the trust document." She scoffed loudly. "You are just jealous, Julian. You always have been. You sit in your tiny, depressing apartment, driving your boring little commuter car, hoarding money you didn't even earn. Carter needs a break. He is under a tremendous amount of stress trying to launch his career." "Stress from what? Sleeping until noon and playing video games?" I shot back. I immediately regretted the words. Engaging with her delusions was always a losing game. "Just remember who gave you life, Julian," she hissed. "You are punishing us because you have no life of your own." She slammed the phone down. That upcoming Sunday was our mandatory family dinner. It was a tradition my father started when we were kids, and Eleanor insisted on keeping it, mostly as a theatrical stage to parade her grievances and guilt-trip me in person. I drove my modest Toyota into her upscale, highly manicured neighborhood. I pulled into the sprawling driveway and parked next to the gleaming new Range Rover. It looked entirely absurd sitting there while I, the one managing the vast portfolio of money that paid for the driveway, drove a car with cloth seats and over 120,000 miles on the dashboard. I walked through the massive double front doors. The house smelled like expensive catering and deep-rooted resentment. Arthur, my stepfather, was sitting in the living room reading a financial magazine. Arthur was a retired aerospace engineer, a quiet, non-confrontational, and incredibly wealthy man who had married Eleanor 2 years after my dad passed. He was a decent guy, but completely and utterly spineless when it came to my mother's demands. He functioned as her personal wallet for the things the trust would not cover. In return for his money, he got to live in a beautiful house, avoid conflict, and just nod along to whatever Eleanor said. "Hey, Julian," Arthur said softly, giving me a highly sympathetic nod. He knew exactly what kind of mood Eleanor was in. Before I could reply, Carter walked down the grand staircase. He was wearing a designer Gucci tracksuit and a heavy gold chain. He didn't even look at me. He just walked straight past me to the kitchen island, and poured himself a heavy glass of expensive bourbon. We eventually moved to the dining room. Eleanor had ordered out from a high-end steakhouse. She poured herself a large glass of expensive red wine, completely ignoring my empty water glass. "So," Carter said, cutting into his perfectly cooked filet mignon with a smirk. "I hear you're playing dictator with the trust fund again, canceling my Aspen trip. Real cool, bro. Very supportive of you." "It is not a personal slush fund, Carter," I said calmly, keeping my eyes fixed on my plate. I refused to give him the reaction he desperately wanted. "If you want to go to Aspen, get a job, earn a salary, use your own money." Carter laughed, a harsh, grating sound. "A job, like you, sitting in a gray cubicle crunching numbers while a boss yells at you? No thanks. I am an entrepreneur. I am building a lifestyle brand. You have zero vision. You are just a corporate drone. Your entire brand is spending dad's money and pretending you earned it," I replied, my voice cold and even. The atmosphere in the room instantly snapped. Eleanor slammed her heavy silver fork down on the fine china. "Do not speak to your brother that way in my house. He is trying to build a life for himself. He just needs seed capital, which you continually and maliciously refuse to provide." Carter sneered at me. His eyes were dark and malicious. He reached across the table, pretending to reach for the salt shaker. As he pulled his arm back, his elbow caught the stem of his full wine glass. It was not an accident. I saw the calculated, deliberate flick of his wrist. I saw his eyes lock onto my shirt. The dark red wine splashed violently across the table, completely soaking the front of my crisp, light gray dress shirt. The cold liquid seeped through the fabric to my skin instantly, staining the shirt beyond repair. "Oops," Carter said, his voice entirely flat. He didn't even try to hide his arrogant smirk. Arthur jumped up from his chair, his face pale, grabbing a cloth napkin. "Jesus, Carter, Julian, I am so sorry. Let me get some club soda." Eleanor just sighed loudly, rolling her eyes. "Great, now I have to hire professional cleaners for this expensive Persian rug. I suppose you'll reject the cleaning invoice too, Julian." Not a single word of apology. Not a single ounce of guilt or reprimand for Carter. I sat there dripping with dark red wine. Looking at the three of them in that specific, quiet moment, a permanent switch flipped inside my brain. I realized they didn't just disagree with my financial decisions. They actively, deeply despised me. They wanted me gone. I stood up slowly, threw my stained napkin onto the table, and walked out the front door without saying a single word. 3 days later, on a Wednesday afternoon, my phone rang. It was Carter. This was incredibly rare. He never called me directly unless he was in serious trouble or wanted something massive. I answered cautiously, my guard fully up. Hey, Julian. His voice was entirely too bright, overly enthusiastic, and fake. Listen, man. I want to formally apologize for the dinner thing. It was super clumsy of me. I've just been really stressed about business. Okay, I said, waiting for the real reason for the call. I knew the hook was coming. So, here is the deal. I have this massive networking event this weekend up in Boulder. It's a huge opportunity for my brand. Lots of high net worth crypto investors will be there. I really need to make a good impression. And my car is completely dead. I saw you driving that company car last week. The Aston Martin DBX. 29510.h. And that's a video TVTP. I know your firm lets you guys sign out the luxury fleet vehicles for client weekends. Could I borrow it just for Saturday and Sunday? It would totally secure my image, man. Please, I am begging you. My firm did occasionally seize luxury assets in corporate settlements, and senior analysts with perfect driving records could sign them out for weekend client entertaining. I had taken the Aston Martin DBX home a few times just to keep the engine running. It was an absolute beast of a machine. A matte black super SUV worth over $220,000. Absolutely not, I said immediately. That is a major corporate liability, Carter. I cannot let you joyride to Boulder in an Aston Martin that belongs to my employer. Come on, I will be so careful. I won't even speed. I just need to pull up to the venue in it. It shows status. Please, Julian, you said you wanted me to work. This is me working. Before I could shut him down completely, I heard the beep of a second call coming in. It was Eleanor. They were coordinating this attack. I put Carter on hold and switched over to my mother. Julian, Eleanor said, her tone authoritative and demanding, your brother just told me about the car situation. Give him the keys. Mom, it is an Aston Martin. Carter is reckless. He has totaled 2 cars in the past 5 years. He is trying to work. She yelled into the phone. You constantly belittle him for not having a career. And the very second he tries to network with wealthy investors to build something, you completely sabotage him. Are you trying to make him fail so you can feel superior? Be a real brother for once in your miserable life and support him. If you do this, I will drop the argument about the Range Rover. The guilt trip was heavy, meticulously calculated, and sharp. She knew exactly how to twist the psychological knife. Deep down, beneath all the anger and boundaries, I still had a pathetic, lingering hope that my family could be fixed. That maybe if I gave them a win, they would finally respect me. Fine, I said, rubbing my temples, feeling utterly defeated. But listen to me closely. If he puts a single scratch on that vehicle, if he gets a single speeding ticket, I am legally deducting the repair costs directly from his living allowance. The trust will not protect him. See, was that so hard? She said sweetly, the venom vanishing instantly. I switched back over to Carter. You can take it, but I am warning you, Carter, that car has a highly advanced corporate GPS tracker installed in it. I will know exactly where you go, where you stop, and how fast you drive. Do not mess around. You are the absolute best, bro. I swear to God, I will treat it like a newborn baby. I did not know it then, but I had just handed him the weapon they would try to use to end my life. Update 1. Friday evening arrived. Carter showed up at my apartment complex to pick up the Aston Martin. He was practically vibrating with excitement. He had his friend Marcus with him. I never liked Marcus. He was a guy who always wore sunglasses indoors, and ran in some very sketchy underground gambling circles. Seeing the two of them together, grinning like they had just won the lottery, made the hairs on the back of my neck stand straight up. I tossed Carter the heavy metallic key fob. I am completely serious about the tracking system, Carter, I said, stepping into his personal space. Straight to Boulder and back. No detours, no showing off. Relax, Julian. You worry way too much, Carter laughed. As they climbed into the luxurious leather interior and drove off, the roaring aggressive exhaust note echoing off the concrete walls, every instinct I possessed told me I had just made a catastrophic error. Saturday morning began quietly. Around 10 a.m., my phone rang. The caller ID showed Leo, my older cousin on my mother's side. Leo was the guy who acted like a cheerful mediator in family disputes, always showing up with a smile. But we rarely spoke one-on-one. Hey, Julian, how's it going, man? Leo said, his tone entirely casual. I heard through the family grapevine that you lent Carter that crazy company car of yours. You must be a nervous wreck, huh? You staying home all weekend just keeping an eye on the GPS tracker? It was a very odd, highly specific question. Yeah, I plan on keeping a close eye on him. Why do you ask? Oh, no reason at all. Just making conversation. Have a great weekend, man. He hung up quickly. I stared at my phone. It felt like a probe. Like he was trying to figure out exactly what my schedule was and whether or not I was actively monitoring the vehicle. By Saturday afternoon, my anxiety got the better of me. I opened the corporate tracking app on my phone to check Carter's location. The app loaded, the little blue circle spinning on the screen, trying to locate the vehicle's satellite ping. Then, the screen flashed a bright warning red. Signal lost. Location services manually disabled. My heart dropped completely into my stomach. You cannot just lose signal on this specific tracking system. It runs on a dual satellite uplink designed to track stolen corporate assets. Someone had to manually go into the car's hidden diagnostic menu, input a code, and shut the system down. I dialed Carter's number immediately. It rang 4 times and went straight to voicemail. I typed out a furious text message. Turn the GPS back on right now or I am calling the police and reporting the vehicle stolen. Nothing. No reply. The delivery receipt showed it was delivered, but he was ignoring me. I paced my small apartment for 48 hours. I could not eat. I could not sleep. I knew with absolute certainty that if that car was heavily damaged, my career in finance was completely over. The firm would fire me for gross negligence, and I would be personally liable for hundreds of thousands of dollars. Sunday evening arrived at 8 p.m. My phone finally buzzed. A text from Carter, "Chill out. Phone died and I forgot my charger. On my way back now. Car is perfect. Stop freaking out." I let out a heavy breath. But the intense feeling of dread did not evaporate. At 9:30 p.m., the earth-shaking roar of the Aston Martin engine rumbled down my quiet street. I walked out to the parking lot. Carter stepped out of the driver's side door. The very first thing that hit my senses was the smell. It was absolutely overpowering. Someone had practically emptied an entire aerosol can of cheap chemical pine air freshener inside the cabin. It smelled like a desperate, frantic attempt to cover something up specifically. The smell of burnt rubber. The car itself was gleaming brilliantly under the streetlights. It had just been washed and waxed. The massive tires were wet with a heavy coat of tire shine. Carter completely avoided making eye contact with me. He tossed the keys from a few feet away, keeping his distance. His hands were visibly shaking. His skin was pale and sweaty. "Thanks for the loan," he said, his voice unusually high-pitched and tight. "Ran great. No issues at all." "Yes. Why did you wash it?" I asked, stepping closer to him. Carter never cleaned up after himself. "I told you I would take care of it," he stammered, backing away toward the street edge. "Look, I got to run. Mom is waiting down the block to give me a ride home." "Wait a minute," I demanded, stepping forward. "Why did you disable the GPS? Where exactly did you go?" He violently yanked his arm away. "I didn't disable anything. The Bluetooth must have glitched." "God, you are so paranoid and controlling. The car is perfectly fine, Julian. Stop interrogating me." He turned and practically sprinted down the concrete sidewalk. A moment later, I saw the distinctive LED headlights of Eleanor's Range Rover flick on down the street. Carter jumped into the passenger seat, and she sped off into the night. I walked slowly around the DBX. The body panels looked pristine. No dents, no scratches. I ran my hand along the hood. Felt fine. I went back inside, but I did not sleep a single minute that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I felt a creeping, suffocating darkness closing in on me. I knew my brother. They were hiding something massive. Monday morning broke with a heavy, relentless thunderstorm. The sky was the color of bruised iron, and the rain was coming down in sheets. I had a severe tension headache. I needed to get the Aston Martin back to the wealth management firm's secure underground lot before my 9 a.m. strategy meeting. I walked out into the rain and climbed into the driver's seat. The overpowering, sickening smell of the cheap air freshener immediately made me gag. I pushed the ignition button. The massive engine roared to life, idling smoothly. My route to the corporate office required 3 miles of local winding suburban roads, followed by a 10-mile stretch on Interstate 25. On I-25, the flow of morning commuter traffic usually pushed everyone to do 80 miles per hour. Keeping the speed firmly under 30 miles per hour on the local roads, the car felt incredibly solid. Then I turned onto the wider multi-lane boulevard leading toward the highway. I pressed the accelerator, pushing the speed up to 45 miles per hour. That is exactly when the nightmare became tangible. It started as a subtle deep vibration in the floorboards. A low, rhythmic times, thrum, thrum, thrum times that reverberated through my dress shoes. I tightened my grip on the leather steering wheel. I quickly glanced at the digital dashboard display. The tire pressure monitoring system showed optimal pressure. I pushed the gas pedal a little more, hitting 50 miles per hour. The low vibration instantly exploded into a violent, terrifying shake. The steering wheel jerked back and forth in my hands so hard my wrists ached. The entire front passenger side of the heavy SUV felt completely loose, like it was floating unattached to the main chassis. Then came the sound. A horrifying, heavy times clunk, clunk, clunk times of bare metal grinding against metal. Adrenaline and pure panic surged through my chest. Something underneath this car was structurally destroyed. Directly ahead of me, only a quarter-mile down the road, was the long on-ramp for Interstate 25. The traffic on the ramp was accelerating rapidly to merge at 75 miles per hour. If I got on that ramp, I would have to accelerate hard to blend in with the massive semi-trucks and speeding commuters. My foot hovered over the gas pedal. The car was shaking violently now, pulling hard to the right. In that split second, a voice echoed clearly in my head. It was my father's voice. "Stop the car, Julian. Do not get on that highway. Brake now." I listened. I slammed on the brakes. The heavy SUV swerved slightly, fighting my control, the anti-lock brakes stuttering on the wet pavement. I jerked the steering wheel hard to the right, throwing on my hazard lights, and pulled directly into the gravel parking lot of Ray's Auto Repair, a small independent shop just half a mile before the highway entrance. Ray was a veteran master mechanic who had worked on my father's commercial fleet for over 20 years. I rolled into the open garage bay at barely 10 miles per hour. The car sounded like a dying animal. Ray wiped thick black grease off his calloused hands with a rag and walked over, his eyes narrowing at the luxurious Aston Martin. "Julian, what the hell did you do to it?" "I didn't do anything to it, Ray," I said, my voice shaking. "My brother Carter borrowed it this weekend. It is shaking violently. It feels like the front wheel is going to completely detach." Ray's expression darkened immediately. He knew Carter's reputation. "Leave the engine running. Step back. Let me get it up on the hydraulic lift." I paced nervously in the small, dingy waiting room. 10 minutes passed. The absolute silence from the garage bay was deafening. Suddenly, the door to the waiting room swung open. Ray stood there. His face had lost all its color. He looked physically sick. "Julian," he said, his voice dropping to a gravelly whisper, "you need to come out here and look at this right now." I followed him out and walked under the suspended vehicle. He clicked on a high-powered LED flashlight and pointed the intense beam directly at the front passenger side wheel assembly. "Look closely at the lower control arm," Ray commanded. I stepped closer. Even with my limited mechanical knowledge, I could clearly see the absolute devastation. The thick solid steel bar of the control arm had a massive, jagged crack running almost entirely through it. It was barely holding together by a thin, fragile sliver of warped metal. "He hit something incredibly hard," Ray said grimly. "Probably a solid concrete curb doing at least 50 miles an hour. He crushed the rim and cracked the suspension. But that is not what scares me, Julian. Look at the lug nuts holding the wheel to the hub." He shifted the beam of light onto the 5 bolts securing the wheel. "They are stripped, all of them. And look right here. There is fresh, clean grease on the threads. Someone took this wheel off, saw the catastrophic fatal damage to the control arm, and purposely threaded these stripped nuts back on just tight enough to hold the wheel in place at very low neighborhood speeds." Ray turned to me, his eyes wide with genuine horror and anger. "Julian, listen to me very carefully. If you had taken this massive car onto I-25 this morning, the vibration of hitting 60 miles per hour would have snapped that cracked control arm instantly. The entire wheel would have folded directly under the chassis. In a vehicle this heavy, at that speed, on wet pavement, you would have violently rolled over multiple times. You would have been crushed. You would be dead right now. No certified mechanic in the world would reattach a wheel to a snapped control arm unless they were actively trying to hide the damage. This is a deliberate death trap. Someone sent you out on the road to die today." My blood ran ice cold. The walls of the garage seemed to spin around me. Carter brought it back and blatantly lied to my face. He sprayed air freshener to cover the smell of burnt rubber. But why? Was he just that pathetic and cowardly about paying a repair bill? Would he really risk his own brother's life over money? Then a sudden, blinding realization hit my brain like a lightning bolt. The corporate dashcam. 6 months ago, the wealth management firm had upgraded the security protocol on all luxury fleet vehicles. They installed hidden, hardwired dashcams seamlessly integrated behind the rearview mirrors. They had cabin-facing lenses, high-fidelity audio microphones, and crucially, a hypersensitive parking mode. If the car suffered a heavy physical impact, the camera would automatically wake up, save the footage of the crash, and continue to record audio to catch hit-and-run drivers. "Ray," I said, my voice trembling with a massive surge of adrenaline, "I need to get into the cabin of that car right now." Ray lowered the lift. My hands were shaking so violently I could barely pry the small plastic casing off the back of the rearview mirror. I popped out the tiny micro SD card. We went to Ray's dusty back office and inserted the memory card into his computer. I scanned the list for files tagged with the red system exclamation mark, "Impact event recorded." There were 2 specific files from Saturday afternoon. I clicked the first video. It was a clear, wide-angle view of a sunny suburban street in Boulder. The digital overlay displayed the vehicle speed, 58 miles per hour in a 35 miles per hour residential zone. The cabin audio kicked in loud and crystal clear. Heavy bass from the stereo was vibrating the microphone. I could hear Carter laughing, followed by the voice of his degenerate friend Marcus. "Man, you should see the way people look at us in this thing," Carter was saying, his voice filled with unearned arrogance. "Your brother is a sucker for letting you take this," Marcus replied. "You think he's sitting at home checking the app?" Carter bragged. "I disabled that stupid tracker the second we crossed the city limits. He has no idea." Then it happened. It was so fast it made my heart jump into my throat. A stray dog darted out from behind a parked van. Carter panicked. Instead of hitting the brakes straight on, he jerked the steering wheel violently to the right. The heavy Aston Martin swerved wildly. The tires shrieked. Crunch, crunch. The sound of the impact was sickening. Crunch. It was a heavy, metallic, bone-jarring thud as the massive front passenger wheel slammed directly into a high-reinforced concrete curb at over 50 miles per hour. The hazard lights automatically flashed. The car ground to a harsh, unnatural halt. The heavy bass of the stereo was instantly cut off, replaced by the frantic, heavy breathing of my brother. "Oh my God," Carter stammered. "Oh my God, oh my God. Dude, look at the wheel," Marcus yelled from the sidewalk outside. "It's completely sideways. It's tucked under the fender." And again, "Shut up, Marcus, just shut up." Carter was hyperventilating. "Julian is going to kill me, he is literally going to murder me. I can't pay for this, I have zero money, the trust won't cover this." "Call your mom, man," Marcus urged. There was a tense silence broken only by the sound of Carter dialing his phone and putting it on speaker. "Carter, sweetheart, how was the event?" Eleanor asked, her voice light. Mom, you have to help me. I wrecked the car. I wrecked Julian's company car." The line went dead silent for a terrifying 3 seconds. When Eleanor finally spoke, the warmth was completely gone. It was replaced by a cold, calculating sharpness. "Did you call the police? Did you call the insurance company?" No, I'm terrified. The wheel looks completely broken. Mom, Julian is going to sue me. He warned me, I'll be ruined." "Do exactly as I say, Carter," Eleanor ordered, her voice devoid of any maternal comfort. "Do not, under any circumstances, call your brother." "Where exactly are you?" "I'm near the industrial park on West 4th Street. "Okay, listen to me, there is a small auto repair shop about 3 blocks down from there. Sal's Garage. It is a cash-only dump and they do not ask questions. Limp the car there. Drive 5 miles an hour. Use the back alleys. I am leaving the house right now. I will meet you there." The recording abruptly ended. I sat back in the cheap office chair, exhaling a breath I didn't realize I had been holding. "He crashed it, and she told him to hide it." "Check the second video, Julian," Ray said softly. "If they went to that shady shop, the parking camera might have picked up the audio while it was turned off." I clicked on the second file. The timestamp was 45 minutes later. The screen was dark. The dashcam was pointed at the interior of a cluttered, dimly lit garage bay. The driver's side window was rolled down, and the hypersensitive microphone perfectly picked up the voices echoing off the concrete walls. I immediately recognized Carter's pathetic whimpering. Then I heard the heavy, clumping boots of a man walking around the vehicle. "Lady, your kid really did a number on this machine," a rough, raspy voice said. "This had to be Sal, the shady mechanic. The lower control arm is snapped clean through. The tie rod is bent like a pretzel, and the custom rim is destroyed. It's a miracle he even got it into the bay. Can you fix it?" That was Eleanor. She sounded incredibly annoyed, not concerned. "Fix it? Yeah, I can fix anything with an engine. But you need a new suspension arm, a new tie rod, a new rim, and a full alignment for an Aston Martin. You're looking at $3,000 absolute minimum, and I cannot even order the specialized parts until Monday morning." $3,000? Eleanor shrieked, her voice echoing shrilly in the garage. "I do not have $3,000 in cash. My son controls the trust accounts." "Can't you just patch it up?" "Patch it?" Sal scoffed loudly. "Lady, this is the main suspension. You do not patch this. The wheel is barely hanging on by a thread of metal." There was a long, heavy silence. I closed my eyes, picturing my mother standing in that dingy garage, her mind racing, doing the twisted sociopathic math she was so famous for. "What if you just put the wheel back on?" Eleanor asked. Her voice had dropped an octave. It was smoother now, colder. "Just tighten the bolts up. Make it look perfectly straight. Just so it looks normal from the outside. I can hammer the rim back so it holds air," Sal said, sounding deeply skeptical. "And I can bolt the wheel back onto the hub. But that control arm is fundamentally cracked. If he hits a pothole or if he goes over 50 miles an hour, that wheel is coming completely off. It is a literal death trap. He is just driving it home," Eleanor said dismissively. Carter whined loudly. "Mom, I cannot drive it on the interstate like that. It's terrifying." You are not driving it, Carter, Eleanor said sharply. We will leave it parked here until tomorrow. Then you drive it slowly on the back roads back to Julian's apartment on Sunday night. Keep it under 40 miles an hour the entire way. But what about Julian? Carter asked, his voice trembling. He drives on Interstate 25 to the firm every single morning. He drives fast, Mom, if he takes it on the highway. Silence, long, heavy, suffocating silence. The mechanic spoke up again, his voice tight. Look, lady, I don't care about your family drama, but if he takes this vehicle on the highway, he is going to flip it. I ain't legally liable for that. I will make you sign a cash waiver. Then Eleanor spoke, and her words turned the blood in my veins into absolute ice. Fine, let him drive it. Mom. Carter sounded genuinely shocked for a fraction of a second. Quiet, Carter. Think for a single second. Just use your brain. Eleanor hissed. If the car catastrophically fails while he's driving on the interstate, it is a tragic accident. Julian has a massive life insurance policy through the firm. And if the worst happens, the $3.5 million trust automatically goes to his next of kin. That is us. The money reverts to us. I clamped a hand over my mouth to stifle a physical gag. My stomach violently lurched. So, Carter's voice was shaking, but he was no longer arguing. The greed had completely overridden his temporary guilt. So, we just give it back to him and say nothing? Exactly, Eleanor said, her tone terrifyingly calm. Pay the man to put the wheel back on. Go buy some air freshener to cover the smell of the burnt rubber. Wash it. Make it look brand new. Do not say a single word. If he notices the shaking, he takes it to a shop. If he doesn't notice, well, that's in God's hands. The video ended, the screen went black. I sat there completely frozen in time. The silence in Ray's office was so heavy it felt physically crushing. My own mother did not just neglect to fix a car. She actively paid a man to turn a vehicle into a guided missile aimed directly at my life. She coldly calculated the odds of my violent death and decided that the financial payout was worth the risk of losing her firstborn son. Julian, Ray put a heavy, trembling hand on my shoulder. I am so sorry, you need to call the police right now. No, I said, wiping a single cold tear from my cheek. The shock was already fading, instantly replaced by a cold, hardened, absolute rage I had never experienced before in my life. Not yet, the police will take months to investigate. She will claim she didn't mean it. I need to make sure she has absolutely nowhere to hide. I need to make sure Arthur sees this. I stood up, my legs felt like lead, but my mind was laser focused. Arthur pays all the daily bills the trust doesn't cover. He gives them their social standing. If he knows what they really are, he will completely destroy them. I am taking this video file, Ray, and I am going to need you to call a tow truck for me. Update 2. I drove my personal sedan straight to Maya's office. Maya had been my best friend since our first year of college. She was now a ruthless corporate litigation lawyer with a mind like a steel trap and a tolerance for nonsense that hovered at absolute zero. When I walked into her sleek, glass-walled office and played the Dashcam video for her, she did not gasp, she did not cry. She simply stood up, locked her office door, and paced the room, her heels clicking aggressively on the hardwood floor. This is attempted murder, Julian, Maya said, pointing a manicured finger at the laptop screen. Or at the very minimum, reckless endangerment, conspiracy to commit insurance fraud, and criminal negligence. We have them on tape. We can bury them so deep they won't see daylight. I know, I said, my hands finally stopping their shaking, but I don't just want them sitting in a jail cell, I want them to lose everything they value. I want them to feel the ground completely crumble beneath their feet before the handcuffs even go on. I want to send the car back, directly to Arthur. Maya nodded slowly, understanding the psychological warfare immediately. Arthur is their moral compass. He's passive, but he's not evil. If he sees this footage, he will leave her. And without Arthur's income, and without the trust money which I am legally cutting off today, Eleanor is absolutely nothing. We spent the next 3 hours planning the execution. Maya drafted the emergency legal paperwork to petition the court for an immediate suspension of my trusteeship, citing hostile and criminal actions by beneficiaries, so that a third-party bank would take over temporarily. That meant freezing all their assets and allowances instantly. Then, we planned the physical delivery. You cannot just tow it there and leave it, Maya said, tapping her pen against the desk. You need to make absolutely sure Arthur receives the evidence directly. You need a letter, something short, something undeniable that forces him to look. I grabbed a legal notepad. I wrote 4 different drafts before I settled on the final, devastating note. It wasn't angry. It wasn't emotional. It was just brutally factual. Is greater than, Arthur, your wife and your stepson decided that saving $3,000 was worth significantly more than my life. They sent me onto the interstate highway in a rigged death trap, actively hoping for an insurance payout. Don't take my word for it. Watch the USB drive attached to this note. I am sorry you have to see this, but you need to know who you are sleeping next to. Julian. I called the towing company Ray recommended. I requested a specific driver, a huge, no-nonsense guy named Hank, who had towed my father's commercial trucks for years. I gave the dispatcher very specific instructions. I need a luxury vehicle delivered to a residential address, I told Hank over the phone. It is a non-running vehicle. It needs to be dropped right in the center of the driveway. And Hank, this is the most important part. You must hand the keys and the envelope directly to the man of the house. Do not give it to the woman. Consider it done. Tuesday morning arrived, the day of absolute reckoning. I woke up with a strange, eerie sense of calm. It was the cold, focused calm of a soldier stepping onto a battlefield, knowing he has the superior artillery. I dressed in my sharpest, most expensive tailored suit. Today, I wanted to look exactly like what I was, the man in total control. I went back to Ray's shop. The Aston Martin DBX was sitting in the lot, looking innocent, sleek, and shiny. You would never know by looking at its beautiful exterior that it was a guided missile specifically aimed at my head. Hank's massive flatbed tow truck arrived. Watching the DBX being slowly winched up onto the tilted bed felt incredibly symbolic. They were hauling away the physical evidence of my mother's ultimate betrayal. I handed Hank the thick manila envelope containing the key fob and the note with the USB taped securely inside. Give this only to Arthur. Older guy, gray hair. Got it? What if the crazy lady comes out screaming? Hank asked. Ignore her completely, I said. Just drop the car, block the driveway, and hand the package to Arthur. I got into Maya's car. She insisted on driving me so I wouldn't be alone during the fallout. We followed the heavy tow truck from a safe distance. The drive to my mother's gated community usually took 20 minutes. Today, it felt like 5 seconds. My heart started to race again as we turned into the subdivision. The perfectly manicured lawns, the massive oak trees, the flawless brick facades of the multi-million-dollar houses. It all looked so peaceful, so perfect. It was a complete lie. We pulled over about 4 houses down, parking under the shade of a large tree. We had a perfect, unobstructed view of the sprawling driveway. Eleanor's Range Rover was parked there. Arthur's SUV was there. They were both home. The flatbed tow truck backed slowly into the driveway. The loud, piercing reverse alarm times beep, beep, beep times cut through the quiet, wealthy morning air like a siren. I saw the massive front double doors swing open. Eleanor came out first. She was wearing a silk robe, holding a coffee cup, looking deeply confused. Then, as her eyes focused and she recognized the matte black Aston Martin sitting on the tilted truck bed, her confusion instantly morphed into sheer, unadulterated panic. She dropped her coffee cup. It shattered on the porch. She started waving her arms frantically at Hank. She's trying to stop him from unloading it, Maya noted, leaning forward. She can't, I said. Then Arthur stepped out onto the porch. He was dressed for his morning golf game. He walked past a frantic Eleanor, looking deeply puzzled. Why was Julian's company car being towed to their house? I watched Hank hop down from the cab of the truck. He completely ignored Eleanor, who was now yelling and pointing at the street. Hank walked straight up the steps, past her flailing arms, and handed the thick envelope directly to Arthur. From my vantage point down the street, the entire scene played out like a silent movie. I saw Eleanor lunge, trying to physically snatch the envelope from Arthur's hands. She knew. She must have realized in that exact second that I knew everything. Why else would I send the broken car back on a tow truck instead of repairing it? But Arthur pulled his arm away. He was a tall, sturdy man, and when he stood his ground, he was immovable. He said something sharp to her, tore open the envelope, and read the note. Even from 50 yards away, I saw his entire posture change. It was immediate. His broad shoulders dropped. He looked at the broken car, then down at the note, then slowly turned his head to look at Eleanor. Eleanor was absolutely frantic now. She was grabbing at his golf shirt, pointing at the car, her mouth moving a mile a minute, probably spinning some elaborate, desperate lie about how Julian is just being dramatic, or Carter had a little bump. It's a misunderstanding. Arthur did not even look at her. He turned on his heel, and walked straight back into the house, tightly clutching the envelope and the USB drive. Eleanor chased after him, looking absolutely terrified. The heavy front door slammed shut behind them. Hank efficiently unloaded the Aston Martin. He dropped it right in the dead center of the driveway, completely and effectively blocking Eleanor's Range Rover from leaving. He unhooked the chains, gave me a subtle thumbs up as he drove past our parked car, and left the neighborhood. Now we wait, Maya said, checking her watch. It was 10:15 a.m. Inside that massive house, Arthur was walking to his home office. He was booting up his computer, he was plugging in the drive. He was about to hear his wife, the woman he provided everything for, agreeing to gamble with her own son's life for an insurance check. 10 minutes passed. Nothing but silence. 15 minutes. The tension in the car was suffocating. Then, at exactly 10:35 a.m., the front doors flew violently open. It wasn't Arthur who came out first. It was a massive, expensive porcelain vase that I knew cost over $1,000. It flew out the door, sailed through the air, and smashed into 1,000 pieces on the concrete driveway. Then came the shouting. We could hear it echoing down the street. It was Arthur's voice. In the 5 years I had known him, I had never once heard him raise his voice. It was a deep, booming, terrifying sound of pure, unadulterated fury. Eleanor ran out of the house. She was crying, really crying this time. Not her fake, manipulative tears. Her face was red, her hair a mess. She was barefoot. Arthur appeared in the doorway. He was holding a large leather suitcase. It wasn't neatly packed, clothes were hanging out of it. He threw it as hard as he could down the steps. Then he started throwing loose items. Designer shoes, a heavy winter coat, a wooden jewelry box. He's kicking her out, I said, a massive, overwhelming wave of relief washing over my entire body. He believes me. Eleanor scrambled on the driveway, trying to grab his arm, begging him. Arthur shoved her away. It wasn't violently abusive, but it was forceful, and definitive. He pointed a rigid finger directly in her face and shouted something that made her physically recoil and collapse onto the grass in a fetal position. Arthur walked purposefully to his SUV. He got in, started the engine, and threw it in reverse. Because the driveway was blocked by the Aston Martin, he aggressively backed his heavy SUV right over Eleanor's perfectly manicured lawn, leaving deep, muddy tire trenches in the grass just to get around the cars. He didn't look back at Eleanor, who was sobbing hysterically on the lawn. He drove past us. I saw his face through the window. He looked completely broken. The stoic engineer was crying. My phone buzzed in my pocket. It was a text from Arthur. I am so sorry, Julian. I didn't know. I swear to God Almighty, I didn't know she was capable of this. I am driving straight to the police precinct downtown. Meet me there. I showed the phone screen to Maya. It's over, I said, feeling lighter than I had in years. The entire house of cards just collapsed. We met Arthur at the precinct. He looked like he had aged 15 years in a single hour. When he saw me, he completely broke down. He hugged me, holding on tight, shaking uncontrollably. I heard the recording, he kept saying, his voice cracking. I heard her voice. How could she? You are her own, flesh, and blood. How could she do that? She loves money more, Arthur, I said gently, patting his back. She always has. She just finally showed her true face. We filed the official police report together. With the high-definition video evidence, the crystal-clear audio recording, Arthur's corroborating testimony about Carter's behavior, and Ray's expert mechanical statement on the sabotaged car, the detectives did not hesitate for a single second. Within 2 hours, they issued felony arrest warrants for Eleanor and Carter for conspiracy to commit insurance fraud, reckless endangerment, and attempted grievous bodily harm. The arrest did not happen quietly. Maya's contacts at the precinct told me later that when the squad cars pulled up to the house, Carter actually tried to run out the back door and jump the fence, but was quickly tackled into the mud by an officer in the neighbor's yard. He was crying, screaming that it was all his mother's idea. Eleanor, true to her nature to the bitter end, tried to bribe the arresting officer with a massive diamond ring she was wearing. They happily tacked on a felony bribery charge to her growing list. I didn't go to watch the arrest. I didn't need to. I went back to my quiet apartment, locked the door, turned off my phone, and slept for 14 straight hours. The legal battle that followed over the next 6 months was incredibly messy. Because I did not physically drive the car onto the highway and sustain bodily injuries, the attempted murder charges were difficult to prove in a trial setting. Maya advised the prosecutor to offer a plea deal to avoid a lengthy, draining trial that Eleanor would try to turn into a media circus. Eleanor, facing decades if convicted by a jury, pleaded guilty to conspiracy to commit fraud, criminal negligence, and bribery of a law enforcement officer. Because of the severity of the audio recording, the judge showed absolutely no mercy. She was sentenced to 4 years in a minimal security state prison, followed by 5 years of strict probation. Carter, instantly turning on his mother and providing a full confession in hopes of a better deal, pleaded guilty to reckless endangerment and destruction of property. He received 18 months in county jail and 800 hours of mandatory community service. But for people like Eleanor and Carter, the real punishment was never the jail time. It was the absolute, crushing financial ruin. 2 days after the arrests, Mr. Caldwell, the senior director at the bank that managed the trust, called me into his mahogany-paneled office. Maya was sitting right beside me. Julian, Mr. Caldwell said, pushing his heavy glasses up his nose, looking at a thick legal binder. Your father was an incredibly shrewd man. He anticipated that Eleanor might try to financially drain you, but he also anticipated she might try something far worse to get to the principal funds. What do you mean? I asked. I mean the moral turpitude clause, Caldwell said, sliding a highlighted document across the desk. It is a hidden clause your father insisted I write into the deepest bylaws of the trust. A clause you didn't even know existed. It explicitly states that if any beneficiary acts with criminal intent against the trustee, or brings severe public disgrace to the family name resulting in a felony conviction, They immediately and irrevocably forfeit all rights, allowances, and claims to the fund. I stared at the document. The legal jargon was dense, but the meaning was crystal clear. Furthermore, Caldwell continued, upon the triggering of this clause, the trust dissolves as a managed entity, and the entire principal balance, all $3.5 million, the real estate portfolio, the liquid assets transfers completely and solely into your personal ownership. Maya smiled, leaning back in her chair. I was stunned. My father had reached beyond the grave to protect me one last time. I wasn't just the manager anymore, the money was mine. Eleanor lost her massive monthly allowance permanently. Carter lost his housing stipend and trust access permanently. And because Arthur filed for a highly aggressive divorce the very next morning, securing a ruthless shark of a lawyer, Eleanor lost the house. It was fully in Arthur's name. He sold the massive estate 3 months later, keeping the profits and leaving Eleanor with absolutely nothing but her designer clothes. There was one last loose end to tie up. Leo. The week after the sentencing, I invited my cousin Leo to a coffee shop downtown. He showed up smiling, trying to act supportive, playing the concerned cousin. "Man, I can't believe Aunt Eleanor did that," Leo said, shaking his head. "It's crazy. Family is crazy, right?" I slid a printed bank statement across the table. It was from Eleanor's personal checking account, which was frozen during the investigation but accessible to me as the former trustee. I had highlighted 3 recurring Zelle transfers of $500, sent directly to Leo. The dates perfectly matched the weekends. I was out of town, or driving the corporate cars. Leo's smile vanished. His face went completely pale. "You were her spy?" I said, my voice dangerously low. "You called me that Saturday morning to see if I was tracking the car so you could report back to her. You sold out my safety for $500 a month." "Julian, bro, listen, I didn't know she was going to." "Shut your mouth," I interrupted, standing up. "You are dead to me. If you ever contact me, if you ever come near my firm, or if you ever mention my name to anyone in this city, I will have Maya bury you in civil lawsuits so deep you will be paying my legal fees until the day you die. Keep the money. Buy yourself some integrity." I walked out of the coffee shop, leaving him stammering at the table. It has been 1 full year since that day in court. My life is quiet now. Delightfully, beautifully, peacefully quiet. I still work at the wealth management firm, but I cut my hours back to consult part-time. I manage my father's real estate portfolio on my own terms now, expanding it, building it exactly the way he taught me. I bought a beautiful penthouse in downtown Denver with my own money. I don't have to stress over denying spa bills or arguing about Range Rover payments. Eleanor sends me long, rambling letters from the state prison. Sometimes the envelopes are stamped with the facility's logo. I do not open a single one of them. I take a thick black marker, write "return to sender" across her handwriting, and drop them right back into the mailbox. I do not need to read her excuses. I do not need her toxic, manipulative version of love in my life ever again. Carter is out of the county jail now. I heard through the grapevine that the felony conviction ruined his chances of getting any corporate job. He is currently working as a dishwasher and busboy at a greasy 24-hour diner on the rough side of town. He lives in a cramped 2-bedroom apartment with 3 roommates. He has to pay his own rent. He has to pay for his own bus pass for the very first time in his 26 years of life. He is painfully learning exactly what it costs to survive in the real world. Sometimes, when people at the firm or old acquaintances hear the full story, they ask me if I feel guilty. They say things like, "She is still your mother. Blood is thicker than water. Family is family." They say that because they didn't hear the recording. They didn't sit in a freezing garage and listen to a mother calculate the return on investment of her son's death. I realized through this nightmare that family is not about blood. Blood means absolutely nothing if the people sharing it are holding the knife to your back. Family is about who has your back when the wheels literally fall off. My mother and my brother were the ones loosening the bolts. My real family is Maya, who fought ruthlessly to protect me. It's Ray, who told me the hard truth when he could have stayed silent. It's Arthur, who chose morality and justice over blind loyalty to his wife. I am safe, I am alive. And I am finally driving my own life with my hands firmly, permanently on the wheel. If you enjoyed this story, please hit that subscribe button. It really helps the channel out and allows us to bring you even more awesome stories. Thank you so much for watching.